Good afternoon, and welcome back to Music 110. Today, this will be a very short lecture, I promise. All I'll be speaking on, is the GREATS writing assignment. So, you all are, the GREATS writing assignment, I have this here on my screen. The GREATS writing assignment, you have to complete by the end of the day, on the next day that we have class after the holiday break. So I wanted to just speak about a couple of things in relation to the assignment so that you're prepared to complete it successfully. And this should take a very short amount of time. So, as a reminder, this is what you are tasked with. Using your knowledge of analog signal flow and digital file types and transmission, record a sound source and use it to create a stereo master mix. Then describe how you would convert this mixed audio into a digital file appropriate for several uses, including uncompressed professional level audio files, compact disc, music posting, websites such as SoundCloud, email dissemination, and social media. Research to identify, use, and cite at least 2 sources to support your description of what types of digital files need to be created to utilize the transmission possibilities listed above. Okay, so yeah, and this is 2 to 3 pages double spaced. Really, the main question is making a connection between file format type and type of transmission. So, thinking about the delivery of digital data in relation to what it's being used, how it's being used, and how that relates to the nature of the data itself. As far as recording a sound, you have already recorded a sound for your soundscape project. So you recorded it either on your phone or some other device. You have that audio file. So all you really need to do is load that one audio file into your digital audio workstation, just the same way that you loaded any audio for your sound collage project. And as soon as you do that, you can turn it into a stereo file. Even if it is a mono source, when you load it in there and you then mix down to disk, you can select stereo. And then you have a stereo file. You have 2 channels of audio in that file that you create as the output from your digital audio workstation. Remember that the file you load into your digital audio workstation, the sample rate and bit depth both cannot be increased within your digital audio workstation. If you record at a sample rate of 44,100, you cannot increase the quality of that recording by just mixing down to 48,000 or whatever. You can certainly mix down to 48,000 samples per second or even higher, but really what you're doing is you're taking a 44,100 sample per second and you're just reproducing that at a higher sample rate, but it's going to be the same quality. So you can't increase fidelity. It can only decrease when you are converting from when you are mixing down, when you're creating a stereo mix. So keep that in mind when you write this paper, that whatever device you're using to record the sound that is going to be the fidelity, that will be the max fidelity that you can have of this particular sound as you are converting it into different types of files. Okay. So to start off, I wanted to just walk through the, we have discussed this topic earlier in the semester, so I wanted to walk through these slides just as a reminder of what we've already discussed. And these slides are on the Blackboard site. And so is my lecture on audio file formats. So you can revisit that lecture and those slides to help you with this assignment. This really is here to just give you a quick reminder of all of the content. So digital audio is in samples. Digital audio, what it does is it takes a measurement of the waveform in the physical sound pressure wave in the air, and it is taking that measurement at a particular rate. So it is always just taking, you could think of it as just taking snapshots, pictures of the waveform at a very, very fast speed. So really what any digital audio format, anytime we're dealing with digital audio, really we're connecting the dots. We're connecting the dots between different measurements of a waveform. That's why we say that digital audio is discrete. It is discontinuous. You take one picture at a time, unlike analog audio, which is continuous. So the analog signal comes into the analog to digital converter. We take the measurements of the sound and those measurements are happening at a particular rate. That then becomes a digital signal that really is sort of like this staircase shape that we see in the third example of the waveform, which then becomes smoothed out through filtering. And no matter what type of audio file format we're talking about, these same basic premises of digital audio remain. So what differentiates all of these different types of audio files from one another is how the data is compressed or not to make the file size smaller or larger. So if you think about having, at least 44,100 measurements per second, each of those measurements has 16 bits. That's a lot of bits. That's a lot of data that's going to be happening because, any bit of audio let's say it's 3 minutes, that's still a lot of bits. 44,100 times 16, then multiply that times the number of seconds in your audio, and you have a lot of bits. So digital audio is very data expensive. So historically, we've had different ways of reducing the file size and compromising on the quality of the audio. So this is always about a balance between file size and the quality, the fidelity of the sound itself. And we could think of audio files as separable into three categories: lossy, lossless, and lossless compression. Lossy are file types that are compressed, meaning there is an algorithm that discards information in a sort of artificial intelligence sort of way that is less important to being able to hear the sound itself. So it discards information and reduces the overall size, the overall file size in as far as when we're just looking at bits of data by an incredible amount, by like something like 90%. And so so this process reduces the file size dramatically, but we lose information. That's why we call it lossy. Lossless file types, there's no information discarded after analog to digital conversion. Remember, we are always losing information when we convert from analog to digital because digital is discontinuous. But whatever the analog to digital converter is measuring, that is written directly to disk when we're looking at lossless file types. Lossless compression, and this would an example of lossless compression would be FLAC and ALAC files. It's a way to, it's really used for streaming, and the idea is that you have a predictive algorithm that goes through the file at the point of departure where the file is being streamed from. It looks for redundant data, has a way of compressing that redundant data, and then unpacking it at the other end, at the point of delivery. So the idea here is you get the quality of lossless audio with the streaming advantages and the streaming speed of lossy audio. And one last thing to think about when we're thinking about lossy files is that when we're talking about bit rate in regards to MP3, et cetera, we are talking about the amount of data required to record 1 second of audio. This is different than thinking about bit rate in relation to streaming speeds. All right, so that was just to take you through a reminder of the different types of files that you're going to be writing about in this assignment. Next, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the other component, which is finding sources that you can cite to back up your position on which types of file format are appropriate for any given type of dissemination of your audio. So what I'm going to do is just very quickly take you through the process of evaluating sources and finding useful ones for this assignment. You need to have two that you cite and that you include in a bibliography at the end of your paper. So we're going to need articles because we don't want to read whole books. So if you just go to the CCBC website, ccbcmd.edu, and you click on the library tab up top, it'll take you to the CCBC library. And now you could certainly start just by searching for articles in this search box for the entire catalog. So let's just try that to start with. So I'm going to put in digital audio file formats. And the reason that I am being specific with my keywords is I know that I'm going to be searching through a huge database of articles, books, etc. Okay, so now I have come to this page, and I'm looking at all of the titles of potential sources that I could use to back up my position in my paper. So So digital audio staginography. I'm not even sure what that word means. Systematic review, classification, and analysis of the current state of the art. Leveraging digital forensics. Okay, that's not really working for me. I'm not really interested in forensics. Freedom of choice, examining music, listening, and the function of my favorite music format. Could certainly this has more to do with music formats, so audio formats. I'm just going to check this out. I'm going to click on this and see what it says. So when I click on this, one thing that I want to be looking for when I'm looking at articles is I want to find the abstract. And the abstract is going to summarize the contents of the article. So here's the abstract down here. And this is just on the main page within the library website. So with so many formats available for individuals to use to listen to music, the present research adopted a uses and gratifications approach to investigate why people prefer particular formats, specifically the present blah 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 blah. Okay, so this seems to be about listeners and what they find to be the most, and why they prefer certain formats over other ones. This might be useful. Certainly the question of the paper has more to do with the disseminator rather than the receiver of the digital audio, like why you, as the person who created this digital audio, would convert it into a particular file type for a particular purpose. But you might be able to talk about the preferences of the people that you are sending it to. So potentially useful. Okay, I'm going to continue to sort of scroll down. And again, what I'm doing is I'm just quickly looking at these titles, and I have a sort of a set of criteria of does this title seem to directly relate to my topic, which is types of different types of digital audio files and the and their sort of dissemination or and delivery. So one thing I might consider, so I have an Introduction to Music Technology book. This could be useful because, first off, it's a book. This means it will be very easily searchable through an index or probably some other sort of search tool. And since it is a music technology textbook, certainly it's going to be talking about file formats explanations for standard audio, right? Okay. So I can see already that it's relatively recently published. This might be actually very useful. So I'm thinking, okay, this textbook could certainly help me, because what I'm noticing is, as I'm looking at all of these academic journals, the titles are very, very specific, and sometimes are talking about terms that I don't even know. So looking at that textbook, An Introduction to Music Technology, could be very useful for me. Okay, so this is what just looking at the general catalog has resulted so far. You all could imagine adjusting these search terms. So digital audio file formats, delivery. And again, throughout this process, adjusting your keywords and seeing the types of results that are produced is useful. So you're kind of like you're always trying to make adjustments to see if you can, through the way that you're using keywords, you can uncover some sources that you weren't uncovering before. Oh, here's an interesting one. Okay, so codec confusion, deciphering the alphabet soup of digital audio format acronyms. So this is going to be a source that helps me to talk about the difference between ALAC, FLAC, all of that other stuff. Now, one thing I notice when I look at this particular source is, let's see, if I go back here, let's see, where did it go? Well, one thing I noticed was that, there it is, codec. So this source is from a periodical, not from an academic journal. Now, that's not necessarily bad, but I do want to talk a little bit about what the difference is. Now, the difference between an academic journal and a periodical or a trade journal is that an academic journal is what we call peer-reviewed. So if I were to get an article on audiophile formats published in an academic journal, I would have to submit it to that journal. The article itself would be read by multiple scholars within my field. They would be my article would be anonymous, so they wouldn't be able to know who I was, and I would not be able to know who they were. And they would just be judging the article on the merits of itself. The questions they would be asking are, does this article offer something new, some sort of new type of knowledge to the topic that is being discussed? And is it factual? Is it factual? Is it relevant? So peer review is incredibly important for the development of new knowledge. It's a way to ensure that what we are reading and publishing, in fact, is contributing something new to the discourse. And what you'll find when you start searching around for articles having to do with technology and audio technology in particular. So if you're trying to do this type of search on Google, pretty quickly I think you'll find that a lot of the articles that are coming up, it's kind of difficult to decipher. Is this a true, reliable article, or is this really just a veiled advertisement for something? So if you just do a Google search on, audiophile formats, digital audiophile formats, you'll end up with a lot of stuff that really just kind of feels like a veiled advertisement. Now, the same thing might happen when you're reading a trade journal, because you're wondering, who is editing this? Who is making the decisions as to whether this is a relevant contribution to what we know about the topic or not? Now, that doesn't mean that they aren't citable sources. It's just something to keep in mind. When you are looking at an academic journal, you can be much more, there's a lot more trust you can have in it because nobody's really making profit, right? There's no profits to be made. In an academic journal, you can rest assured that you're not reading a veiled advertisement. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at some other options for finding academic articles. Now, when I was just searching, I was just using the main search function here, but the library also has specific databases. So if I click on article and research databases, it takes me to this page, and there's a whole huge list of all these different databases. Each of these items takes you to somewhere where you can do your own, keyword search into a whole bunch of different publications and databases. So already this is a lot to think about and a lot to look at. So we need to sort of select down to databases that would be useful to us. So, I mean, we're talking about music, we're talking about digital technology and computers. All right, so right away I see Arts and Humanities database. I click on that, and this will take me to the ProQuest Arts and Humanities database, and I can write in here something like digital audio file formats. So this was the same search term that I put in for the library database, and already I'm getting very different results. From the get-go, I see, okay, QuickTime leads the standard for file formats. All right, this is just what I was talking about before. This is a trade journal. The article title already seems to be an advertisement for Apple. Now, it could be that QuickTime really was leading the way, but it certainly seems like, like that's what they are advertising. I also am like, QuickTime, really? And then I look over here and I see, oh, this was published way back in 1998. So that leads me to wonder, like, well, maybe I should be changing the window of publication date for my search here. And so how might I decide when I should sort of where I should cut off the dates? So clearly I want recent articles, but maybe I don't want something written in 1988 or something like that. So how can I make a decision about what articles to remove from my results based on when they were published? Well, we're thinking about all these different types of of audio files, right? And we happen to know that lossless compression is the most recent format invented. So what if I just put in when was, there we go. I would just search for this earlier. When was FLAC created? So I click, and this is just my Google search, and it gives me this quick answer. 2001. 2001 is when FLAC was created as an open source alternative to other lossless audio file formats emerging at the time. So I'm thinking, well, my search should definitely be reduced to articles published, after 2001 at the earliest. So I will adjust this to 2001, update my search, and that should get rid of some, because, I want something that's going to be comparing all of those, all of these file types to one another. Okay. So now I've got a new set of results. Again, this database is giving me a mix of scholarly journals and trade journals. And as I'm looking through, I'm able to sort of decide based on the titles and looking in there and reading the abstracts whether these articles will help me in justifying why I am going to choose a FLAC file as opposed to an ALAC file for a particular purpose. Okay, so this is the Arts and Humanities database. I wanted to just let's look at one more database that we can access through the library website, which is Jstor. Now, the Jstor database is particularly useful because it's only going to give us peer-reviewed academic sources. Again, it's fine to use a trade journal or a periodical. Just be aware that it's not the result of peer review, and there are reasons that you should be aware. Okay, so digital audio. Yeah, I mean, as I'm looking through here, I can certainly adjust the. I could try to adjust the publication range. Already, I'm just kind of like looking at some of these dates. These are all very recently published, much more so than in the Arts and Humanities database. A lot of this seems to be the intended audience of these articles are librarians. So it's articles about what types of audio files to use to preserve, when you are digitizing your collection. So a lot of this has to do with that. There's also stuff that has to do with piracy, et cetera, et cetera. Now, so again, I'm looking at the types of hits I'm getting, and I'm going to try to think about, okay, how could I adjust my search so I get less of this stuff that has to do with libraries and more stuff that actually has to do with the file types themselves and which ones to use. So there are all sorts of approaches I could take, right? I could try to reduce this by subject. I could try to adjust my keywords. Again, I am trying to find something that will help me answer the question at hand. And I'm doing this just by skimming titles and eventually landing onto sources. So those are the 3 places I'm encouraging all of you guys to go to. Start with the CCBC main catalog, and there are definitely useful things you can find there. Then go over to the databases, and there's plenty of stuff in both the Arts and Humanities database and in Jstor. And if you still are trying to find something, you can certainly use Google. But like I said, in general, especially if you're trying to find a source, a citable academic source, it can be a lot more difficult because Google is just going to try to find stuff from anywhere on the web. These databases are already curated. They already have stuff that's going to be directly useful to you. So this is really the place to start. I would encourage all of you guys to find your sources in one of these places that I just demonstrated. All right, y'all. So it's 3 pages, double-spaced, 2 sources, talk about all the different file format types and why you would choose one over another for all of the purposes that are listed. And then, turn it in by the end of the day, the next day that we meet for class, which is next week. All right, have a wonderful holiday. I hope you all are safe and healthy during that time, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.